Hey everyone, before we get into today's episode, which by the way, I really encourage you to stick around because this is an incredible episode. I'm saying that from a place of I experienced it and it had a profound effect on me. We get really deep into talking about self-care, talking about the importance of loving ourselves. So I really encourage you to listen to it. But before we jump into that, I wanted to give you all a reminder because we've not given a reminder in quite some time, and we have an incredible community that meets every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. But I'm here because I want to give all of you a reminder that we meet with an incredible community on Tuesday evenings. It's a place for us to continue this conversation, to let go of ourselves, of thought, and to tap into just the present moment and just be with other really cool people who really are tapped into this conversation as well. So really encourage you, if you're thinking about it, just come and check it out. We have a really friendly community. We have like 3 people who have been coming regularly for 2 months or so. So we would love to see more people arrive because it is an incredible conversation and more people deserve to be a part of it because it only gets more powerful with the more people who come. So really encourage you to come because we want you to come. If you're thinking about it, come check it out. We're nice, we're welcoming, and we want to see you there. So right now we have a free call at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then we have a Patreon call for those who pay, I think, $5 a month that meets at 8 p.m. And we're also going to add another Patreon call on Thursdays at 5:30 Eastern. So stay tuned for that. That'll be starting here in a couple of weeks. And we look forward to seeing you there. The link to sign up for this is in our show notes below. So take a chance, click on that, join the Zoom, and we look forward to meeting you there. And enjoy the episode. This is a good episode, guys. Hello, welcome back to Life Unpotted. Sophie here. Just wanting to have an open conversation today to express myself. This morning in therapy, I was reflecting on how this podcast is really a vehicle for that, to just have an open conversation about what's on my mind, what's on Daisy's mind. And for that reason, we skipped an episode this past Thursday because we were going through a lot, processing a lot. And we just kind of said to ourselves, hey, it's easy to put a lot of pressure on ourselves when creating this podcast because we care about all you guys, we care about our listeners, but it also comes to a point where we have to check in and be like, okay, we can take a day off. And just seeing how important that was to take time off, even if it was just one day, to take a breather, come back to myself, gather my thoughts, gather my emotions. And I guess just how I'm just realizing and remembering how damn important it is to keep coming back and connecting to ourselves, because my life has felt chaotic. My life has felt crazy. It's felt like a whirlwind of emotions, a whirlwind of change, a whirlwind of feeling a lot from an emotional sense. And I think sometimes when these really intense emotions come up, they blindside you. And we've been doing this podcast for over a year, and we rotate between being in these phases where we're going through really intense emotions, the emotions of life, the reality of this existence that we can't escape, we can't bypass this process of sitting through how we're feeling. And then there's times where I'm feeling really, really great. And I guess today I'm feeling relaxed, I'm feeling at ease. And I think because I have been facing and sitting through what I'm feeling. And I noticed yesterday and the past 2 days just how much impatience I feel sometimes when I don't feel 100%, and how much I want to know, like I want an answer. I want to understand. And yeah, so I think for this episode, I'm just trying not to think too much, trying to just let the conversation unfold naturally. And that's where I'm at. I think you hit on something really important there, specifically being around skipping a day of the podcast, because the amount of pressure we've put on ourselves for this podcast is astronomical. I've put more pressure on this podcast than anything else of like, don't miss a day, don't skip a day. And I'm glad because look where we are. We've learned a lot. But if we look at what we talk about and connecting with ourselves, think of like a workaholic.
It's so easy to sacrifice everything in the name of getting something out, to sacrifice you feeling connected to yourself, to sacrifice your relationship qualities, to sacrifice your overall quality of life for the exact reason to just get things out, get them out, achieve more. And it feels like I've done that a little bit with this podcast because like we've gone. And I think recently I've been reaching a point of what's the purpose of this? And so I think yesterday when we decided we weren't going to record for Thursday, I felt as though that was the right decision because it almost feels like if I would have chose to record and made myself be in that place to have a conversation where I wasn't feeling good mentally. There's been a lot going on emotionally. As you said, we go through both individually go through cycles of sitting through really intense emotions. And particularly those times, it's, maybe not realistic to record an episode talking about emotions when you're really sitting through all of the shit. Maybe it's best to sit through it, come back to it the next day when you're feeling better, because the reality of emotions are when you take accountability for them, it's really, really, really hard. And I look back to this podcast and I look at times when we weren't taking account, or I'll say when I wasn't taking accountability for my emotions. One big projection, but I also didn't understand how to set boundaries with recording. It's like when you take accountability for your emotions and what you're sitting through, you learn to say, you know what, this is a boundary I'm going to set because first and foremost, I'm going to stay connected to myself because that is what is the main thing, is to stay connected. That is the purpose of this podcast, is to, I don't want to say spread awareness, but yeah, spread awareness for lack of a better term of connecting with yourself, sitting through emotions. So who am I to show up to a podcast that prioritizes that in a place where I'm not in the space to do that? So all that being said, I think it was a big lesson, a big win, a big realization of skipping an episode and saying, hey, we did that and I'm better for it because I understood what is the most important thing here. And that is to stay connected to myself, to continue staying on this journey. And sure, I'll get to a place where I probably will be able to record when I'm sitting through all that. That's not where I'm at right now. And I think it's healthy to set realistic expectations of yourself, of taking accountability for your emotions and what that's going to look like for your output, what that's going to look like for your productivity. I think this is where, we're not going to be we can't expect ourselves to show up exactly the same every single day. We're going to wean and flow up and down. There's days where I need to put more attention to sitting through things. There's other days where it's like, I don't even need to think about that because things are smooth sailing. And I don't know if that is being a woman with our cycle, hormones, I don't know. But I do know that knowing yourself is important, and taking accountability for your emotions helps you know yourself and it helps you know what you need. So I'm feeling very happy, very relaxed, and very proud of us for skipping an episode because we could have easily forced ourselves to record, and it probably would have been not a fun episode. I don't know how fun that would have been to listen to. And we learned to show up for ourselves. And I think that's a hard lesson to learn, especially in the name of productivity. So good job, Sophie. Good job, me. We showed up for ourselves and knew it was best.
I'm having a lot of thoughts in response to what you said. I think the first one, and I want to just address it to whoever's listening right now, is this message you just said about meeting yourself where you're at. Because I personally find this, the mind that I have, and I think it's really the mind that we all have, loves to put so much pressure on myself, trying to understand and make sense of everything in every given moment. So for example, when I'm experiencing a lot of emotions, or when, like you're saying, this expectation to feel 100% every single day, it's like what we were saying on the attachment episode recently of we attach to feeling states. And when we don't feel that certain feeling state, to me, it's like if I wake up and I'm feeling cloudy, it's just recognizing how much of a role I play in resisting. And yesterday, holy shit, it was at the end of the day. Yesterday, I was just feeling, I don't know, tense, stressed, anxious, lost, quite frankly. the normal course of cycling through these emotions that I've experienced. I'm seeing now this is really like the normal fluctuation. Or maybe I'm posing the question to myself, does it have to be like that? Because what I realized last night, I was doing a yoga flow on my mat. It was like 9 p.m. or maybe it was earlier, like 7 o'clock. I was like, I need the lights off. I need to just have like one small light on, which another thing I've been realizing is like, you need to cultivate spaces throughout at the end of the day or at some point in your day to just slow down. And that's what I did last night. And I started doing this yoga flow on the Open app, which, wow, it was everything I needed in that moment. And I realized in that moment, my body is so tense right now. My shoulders are tense. My hips are tense. Everything is so tense. And I think through this journey of becoming aware of the state I'm in, like as opposed to living, a few years ago or even a few days ago, I guess, where I'm so caught up in something, I'm in this very intense state of resistance that I don't even recognize that my body is so tense. And the more I do yoga, the more that I get to know exercising and flowing from a more connective, mindful place, the more I'm like, wow, yoga gets it. This practice gets it. It gets that we so easily are going that we don't take the time to just slow down. And what I'm seeing, and I think it's kind of this really interesting thing I'm reflecting on, I'm thinking about the past like few days, and I'm like, when was this a gradual thing that happened? When did I start making the decision that I was going to get tense? Because I think what I see when I start to come out of these really intense emotions, it's not really coming out of them, it's relaxing into them. So it's not that I'm not feeling anything differently that I am now today that I was a few days ago, but that resistance and the gripping of my body and being so scared and being so anxious, I'm becoming more aware than ever of how often I get anxious and how that is my body's resort. When a really scary emotion's coming up or an emotion I've labeled as scary, I don't want to handle it, or I don't know how to handle it sometimes. And I think it's just really powerful, and to whoever who is listening, taking a moment to check in with yourself. And a lot of the times I think this condition or the state of our minds are reflective or mirrored through the state of our body. Or for me, how am I viewing my work right now? Am I pissed off that it's raining? Or am I able to relax into the fact that it's cloudy? Am I judging every single thing around me? Like, in terms of how do we become aware of when we're caught up, when we are subconsciously holding on and gripping too much? I think for me, I'm developing this level, not like a kind of like a test, but looking around me to figure out, wait a minute, if I'm judging myself for posting something on social media, something's up here, because that's not my prevalent or the most prevalent base state anymore. It used to be. I used to live in judgment all the time, but now I'm seeing you can use these as signs or signals, because I think perhaps the biggest thing I'm learning is that a lot of the times we don't know what we're doing to ourselves. And I think that is the hardest yet most important piece of insight to cultivate within ourselves. It's really maintaining a constant awareness of how am I treating myself right now. And if you're someone like me, which I'm sure you probably are, because I think we all struggle with this, my base state is self-sabotage. And my base state is anger. My base state is getting mad at myself. And if I'm sad, I'm going to be like, you fucking idiot. Do that better. So I'm kind of amazed at looking at the way I, by default, treat myself. And it's like through this journey, I just keep becoming more and more aware of it.
Phew. There's so many things I can say to that. But I'll start with one thing. What you said, maintaining a consistent state of awareness, that hit me really hard. So I'll start by giving an example of how that showed up in my day today. Oh, gosh. Okay. So I woke up, went on a walk, and I was watching my thoughts. I didn't bring a phone. I didn't bring anything. I was like, you just need to go outside because your thoughts are going crazy. You need to get some movement. And I could feel myself being like, oh, like you feel good enough to where you could easily avoid taking accountability and sitting through your feelings. Like you feel good enough where you could go sit at a cafe, get a coffee, and avoid. You're feeling good enough where you could enjoy that. And I was like, but nope, you're not doing that. Because 4 hours from now, you're going to get triggered and you're going to say, oh, I decided to let go of that awareness by going and avoiding and getting some sort of distraction because you felt good enough to do so. So you decided, okay, I'm gonna take this awareness off and I'm gonna throw it out to the dogs to play with, and I'm not gonna take care of it. We were just listening to Noah Khan, so all the dog references, But I think like this idea of recognizing that awareness is something that you actively choose to like wear around you, like a beam of light or a halo, whatever. It's something that you actively hold down. Like when you're doing a bicep curl, you're actively working on pulling it back, pushing it down, pulling it down. Your muscle is actively engaged. And awareness requires the exact same type of engagement as if you were perfectly working with a workout facilitator or a trainer, and when they just adjust you perfectly and you feel the pull and you feel it properly, you're doing it right. And I think that is similar to the way that we have to hold awareness. So going back to that example, I had the thought of, right, you're feeling good enough to where you can let this awareness go for now if you want. But I also, in an annoying way, had the awareness come back and say, but you're not going to set yourself up for a day or tomorrow or for the rest of the week if you go and let go of this awareness. It's almost like when we think we're fine letting go of the awareness. And by that, I mean, I sat through something yesterday and today I'm feeling okay. So I can stop feeling. I can go avoid. I can go party. I can go drink. I can go do something that's going to make me forget I was even feeling bad because you're feeling just good enough. But I think it's those moments where you're feeling just good enough that you hold on tightly to awareness and think, right, what is this going to set me up for the next 4 hours? Where will I be? What will help me show up in a very triggered environment in 4 hours from now if I hold on to this awareness and sit through it, if I go and distract? I noticed you had a question, Soph.
Well, I wanted to ask, so what I feel like you're describing is kind of like this very nuanced process of we say, right, we need to maintain awareness. And awareness meaning we need to become aware of the way in which we're responding, the way in which we're reacting. Really, when have we become lost in the mind? When have we become like held hostage to the thoughts, to the fear, to the control? So you're describing like you're on this walk and you kind of feel your body pulling towards one way, which I've seen in my life really come up a lot. It's like you notice a thought of, I want that. Or I notice a thought of, I'm judging myself. Or I'm noticing the thought of, should I move back to New York? It's impulsivity, it feels like. But I wanted to ask, like, how did you distinguish in that moment? Was the awareness when you had that feeling of like, no, but don't do that? Was that another thought? Or like, was that a different sensation? Was that like kind of like a knowing? How would you, for someone listening, decipher or separate those two experiences of one being, oh, I know that is just my mind trying to escape. Basically, how do you separate yourself from your thoughts like in that moment?
I guess I'll give an example. Say like you're in high school or you're in college and it's really late and you didn't do an assignment. And you could say, oh, I can just take the 0 on this. But you feel a little bit by not doing it. And you can be like, oh, I can go to bed. That'll just solve everything. But there's that little pulling inside of you that's like, but you can do this. It'll set you up better. You'll feel better tomorrow when you go to class and you turn it in and you did it. You'll know that you actually showed up and tried. And I use that as an example that's more tangible of maybe someone can relate to putting something off till last minute late at night to do. And they could keep putting it off and riding that wave of, I don't care. But deep down, are you not showing up for yourself in that moment? Deep down, are you actually abandoning yourself. I think it's noticing that small pull inside of you that's saying, you should do this. This is what's better for you. Or like, I think it's like that classic tale, the folklore tale that shows up in all cultures. But the example that I read most recently was from Native American cultures of, there's always two wolves inside of you. The one that wins is the one you feed. And I think you can apply that to awareness. And by awareness, it's that higher knowing inside of you. You're tuned in enough to yourself that you're able to make the discernment, make the recognition of what is the right thing to do for myself right now that's actually going to set me up for tomorrow or 5 minutes from now. And all I really mean by that for this example that I gave when I was walking was there's two paths I could have gone down. The one of abandoning myself and forgetting I had to hold all these emotions and basically not taking accountability for my emotions, or the path of, right, this is the right thing I should be doing. I should be walking. I should be watch my mind go wild, but be able to meditate in that sense of kind of observing it from a distance. You look a little confused, so I just want to see if that all made sense.
Well, you're categorizing as the right thing to do. So is it a pressure you're putting on yourself, or is it something else? Is it just like a knowing that you have?
I think it's the same thing as you might get really triggered and like might want to like scream at your mom as a kid and like project and get angry at her. And you can do that, or you can sit through your emotions and not do that. So that's what I mean. That's what I mean by the right thing. You can decide what the right thing is to you, but there's going to be a consequence. I guess maybe that's a more clear way to put it, is that what consequence do you want to deal with 5 hours from now? What consequence do you want to have to clean up? Is it one where you took accountability for your emotions? You sat through them, really uncomfortable, but you didn't make a mess? Or one where you don't sit through it and you make a mess? What repercussions is that going to have on your life? So what consequence do you want? I guess that's the way you look at it, the way I looked at it, of I want my life to look a certain way, as peaceful and easeful, and me showing up and trying every moment to take accountability for my emotions. So I live in a space of relaxation as best as I can, where I'm not creating hostility, where I'm not creating anything that is going to be a projection onto others. So I guess it's a world of consequences, because sometimes not taking accountability has way more negative consequences, in my opinion, than sitting through the discomfort of emotions, because it disappears a lot faster.
Do you feel like this is like a muscle that you've been strengthening more and more? Does it come easier to you than, like, let's say like a year ago? Like, how have you seen you cultivate awareness? Is it something that you can lose like this? Or like, can you fall back so easily into the old ways? And can you fall back so easily into those old patterns? Do they feel farther away from you? So I think this journey is really confusing and really hard, of the journey of waking up. And because it's not linear, like, I want to be able to say there's a beginning point and there's an end point. So I'm 3/4 the way done. Like the other day, we were both just like, is this life forever? Feeling and going through shit and experiencing it? Like, is this life forever? It's like, I can't tangibly see any of this quote unquote progress. I can't see, I see it through, okay, I don't react as much anymore. Like the other day, I did get angry and I did react a little bit. And that felt weird. I was like, whoa, I don't do that as much anymore. I don't know. I guess it's like sometimes it just feels confusing, because this new world I feel like I'm living in, of awareness, of becoming aware of everything and knowing when I'm doing something to self-sabotage. Like, it's annoying and frustrating sometimes to have the awareness. And there's times where I'm just like, I wish I could just be like I was a few years ago, not knowing, just going out and numbing and not caring about anything. And it's like, it's really uncomfortable to deepen your awareness, because it requires you to let go, or requires me to let go of all of these stories that I've invested in so heavily about myself. So yeah, it's like, sometimes I'm just like, holy shit, taking accountability and choosing that path of I don't want those consequences in my life. It can feel like at times, like, why the hell am I doing this? Why am I choosing the route that feels so painful? But you realize, like, that's just you unlearning all of the shit. And I feel like it's a constant unlearning process that I've been asking the question of, does this end or does this just deepen? Because it feels like over time, it's just been deepening and deepening. And I am seeing a lot of changes in my life, but it's a gradual process that requires you to go through that same damn cycle so many times. It's like you're going through the washing machine over and over and over and over again. It's like, when are you going to learn the fucking lesson?
Awareness is, like, in my opinion, a pendulum. On one end, you're flying high with awareness. You're seeing the reality of things, and it's beautiful. It's deep. It's almost as though you're not triggered by anything, right? You see things as they are, and it's exciting, and it feels good, and you feel relaxed. Nothing's bothering you. You're present, right? That's the flip side. That's one side of the pendulum of awareness. Swing to the other side of the pendulum of awareness, and it's exactly everything that you're saying right now. You're judging it. You're creating ideas about it. You're not necessarily that aware of it because you're judging it. You're in the mind. You're not present. So, but that's part of it. You can't have one without the other. The pendulum just keeps swinging back and forth, back and forth. That's my opinion of it. And it feels as though that awareness, self-awareness, is the output of just consistent taking accountability for oneself. Taking accountability is the muscle that grows into self-awareness, in my experience. And to answer your question, from a year ago, even from 2 months ago, I can see a significant difference in my life of the awareness that I hold. Now, does this make it like a cakewalk? Certainly not. If anything, it's really difficult, more difficult than otherwise, because it requires a level of self-restraint. And at the same time, it allows freedom of self-expression. And by that, I mean, for me, a year ago, if I was in a room full of people who were dancing and being free and just like having fun, I would have shut down and ran away from that. So not taking self-accountability there, that's saying, I can't be a part of that. It's creating a story of, oh, I feel hurt by that. That's not fun. But I wouldn't say that's painful. That's just self-sabotaging. Fast forward today, if I'm in that same environment, the awareness comes in of saying, right, these are the stories you've told yourself about this. And for some reason, that will make me feel like I'm getting stabbed and I want to cry. And I'll sit through that for a minute, and then I'll let myself dance, jump around, be a part of the moment. There's no stories. I allow myself to be in the present. And that minute of that transition is really difficult. And I don't think I ever knew that was possible, that I can sit through all of that pain as opposed to plastering it in the walls of the idea of what Daisy is, of what happened to her, of her experiences, of the story of she can't do that because this is the reason why. That's the investment in the story of Daisy. And on the opposite of that is taking accountability for, you feel this way right now, but that doesn't mean anything about you. That means that you have feelings. So just stay with them. Don't abandon them. Don't try to run away through getting alcohol, through creating stories. All of these are the same things. They're tools of avoidance. So I think through taking that accountability for the last year, I've learned to have this mindset that comes in of saying, right, I've broken the story. You can sit through these feelings and then you can join in and be a part of the environment. You don't have to isolate yourself. So I think when you look at that pendulum and you hold in the awareness, you hold in the emotions that you're feeling as opposed to giving into them, I think that's an interesting one to look at. Holding the emotions and still going about it, having a poker face about it, and then as opposed to giving into them, where it's almost like that you become the emotion. And that's not fun. It's hard to get out of that. So I think with the pendulum of awareness, holding and staying with that emotion it takes being in the place of judging everything and then accepting it, and it swings up to the right and you're in the present, and that feels really good. So it's just a constant series, I think, of going back and forth. And that's my experience with it. But that the swing gets fast. It goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then it holds up to the right. And then maybe it holds to the left a little bit, but then it comes back. But there's more of a consistency when you're able to take accountability for your emotions. And just bringing this back with the podcast, what we started with, look at the workplace and look at how many stories we create as the people who are in the workplace. Imagine what real accountability would look like in the workplace. Saying, you want me to do that for you? I can't do that for you. Like I think of the environments that we've cultivated within our society, and it's almost as though we equate stress with productivity, with you're valuable. The more you wear yourself thin, the more valuable you are, because you can take care of yourself. You are pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and taking care of yourself. And I think for so long, maybe because history of wars and actually just needing people to get things done, there's been this level of, we don't give a shit what your mind says, what you feel like. We don't care how you feel. We care about your output. And that just seems like something that's been ingrained in our society. But what if that was flipped more to say, we need you to have a certain output, but we value your inside. We value your mind. We value your body, because we know that the root of everything, of all bad, of all evil, is the hate you have within yourself. And we know that oftentimes you have to hate yourself in order to survive in your environment. Like, what if we as a society started to say, we value your mind, your body, your soul. We value that. So we want you to take care of that. There's incentive for you to take care of that. There's no incentive in our society to take care of that because there's no money making in that. So food for thought.
And it's just like, it works, because I have learned to hate myself in a lot of ways. Like, I see it clearly even podcasting right now. Like, I'm in an emotional state, and I see how my whole mind's going towards, what's the outcome of this podcast? What's the product going to be? How valuable is this? Like, thinking so heavily about myself. And it's almost like we've become so numb. To what we're experiencing, because the society that we've grown up in places such an emphasis on your value being your productivity. What are you creating, and how's that going to be perceived? I'm really reflecting on how like anxious I've gotten, or how much of an anxious state I've been in podcasting a lot, or creating, or putting any sort of output out there. And I started to realize, like, it's not even, I used to think it was a fear of not going to be able to make enough money. Okay. Why am I so scared about how this podcast sounds? It's not that, I'm realizing. It's so much deeper. It's like, I don't believe I'm valuable unless I get a certain output. I don't believe I'm worthy unless people think of me in a certain way. I don't believe I have value in society. And it's almost like you can hear me say that. And I wonder, to someone who hasn't looked at themselves, they might be like, wow, you feel that way about yourself? And it's like, we all do. It's the subtleties of in which our society has been built, this culture has been built, that we all exist in, that we all have agreed to existing in. And yeah, unlearning all that shit is fucking hard as hell. It's so hard, because it's been ingrained in my mind and all of our minds since we were born into this life, into this existence. So of course, like, I still see it come up time after time again, especially when I'm in a state of feeling a lot of emotions. Like, I don't know how to just feel them. All of a sudden, it's like you're saying, it's getting assigned to something else. And on the community Zoom the other night, we were having such an awesome conversation, and I was noticing like how much I think that people don't value what I have to say, and how I'm always like, oh, do they actually? Like, when I receive a compliment, I'm like, that's weird. Why are you saying that? Why are you saying that you like what I'm saying? And I think that's come into this podcast, into what we're creating, like, or the anxiety I experience when we sit down of, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? And it's like that. The thinking has kept me in such a small, limited perspective my entire life. And when I think about who I was before I decided to start a podcast and post on social media. Like, I was so terrified. And I see how that fear finds its way back up. Of like, I posted a story the other day of a song that I like. It was a Casey Musgrave song. And I was like, her album's really cool. And after that, I was like, why would you post that, you weirdo? No one cares what you think. No one cares about what you have to express. And it's like, that still finds its way back up. And I see how easy it is to believe it as truth. And holy shit, like, talking about awareness.
Well, I think this is a perfect example and a perfect time to practice self-awareness and meditation with those feelings that just were brought up that you had from posting something that was true to you, and almost like the disdain you had for yourself, the self-judgment. Can you bring those feelings up? Do you feel them? Because I think it's a good practice to just sit with them. It's almost like you feel there's actual, like, say these emotions are Legos, like big Legos, and that you feel like the big blocks in your stomach, and it's like a tornado, and you feel them twirling around, because that's what happens when we have these big emotions. And we can take those big emotions and project them onto a story about ourselves, which is what you just did. Or you can let that tornado rip wild in your stomach and feel all the discomfort with that. But that's meditation. You're just sitting with those emotions with no thought, and you're sitting with them and you're observing them. And that's what meditation is. You don't have to be sitting cross-legged. It's acknowledging those big emotions that come up, taking a step back, detaching from the story, from the narratives you're telling yourselves about what that means about you, as opposed to having that full body sensation of like, oh my God, it's so hard. That's why things like meditation, different types of it, and yoga are so helpful. It helps move that energy around and with your breath. Like, that's why I think, in my opinion, it's so impactful.
Dude, it's just like these stories. If the story of Sophie was a book, it feels like it'd be like 40,000 pages long. Okay, what chapter are we looking at? The story of Sophie not being good enough. That's a pretty fucking long chapter. Okay? It's a long chapter. And I'm seeing now, it's like the chapter is almost circular. Like, there is no endpoint of the chapter. It's like you thinking that what you're reading, forgetting that it's just a story. You get so immersed in the story, you get so immersed in what's on the paper that you forget that, oh wow, I wrote this one day, but I don't have to keep believing it anymore. I don't have to keep listening to this book. I can rewrite the story of Sophie, and I can rewrite the story of my life. Wow, like this story, I'm seeing it. I see it come up, and it's going to probably keep coming up, and it's like, it's so deep. It's so deep.
Take that story of Sophie, run it through a shredder, and then throw that shredder into a bonfire and watch it explode, because it never existed. It didn't ever have to exist. And as soon as you start to sit with those emotions, it is like it never existed. You see that as a separate person. It's like your doppelganger. It didn't exist.
Yeah, but it's like, don't shred it, because if I'm shredding it, I'm resisting it. And I'm starting to believe it has truth. No, I mean, that's a really great analogy. Like, I get what you're saying, but I'm responding to that and saying like, yeah, like,
well, of course, I'm not saying resist it. That was your interpretation of that. My point in saying that is saying that you're discarding it. I guess maybe you're walking through it. You're sitting with those big emotions. And in that, when you do that, it disappears. That version of you, that story of you disappears when you sit with those emotions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the time I spend reading that book lessens, like it becomes 4 days now that I'm caught up in that story. It used to be 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 whole month of limiting myself that I'm not going to go post something else, holding myself back. Like, we open up the conversation and talking about like, is this linear? Is this a journey of becoming aware and unlearning and questioning everything we've ever thought? Is that linear? No, it's certainly not, but that doesn't mean we don't keep deepening. You'll never be back to where you started because you'll never have that same perspective. And even when you're going through the shit, even when you're judging yourself, even when you're believing that story about yourself that you said, I thought I let go of this, you're never back to square one because it's like, right. As soon as we started getting into this podcast, it's opening up my mind of like, right. Okay, that's the story. Like, it took me like 30 minutes to kind of listen and like with what you're saying, help me. And you kind of see that's the dance of, and that's the pendulum swinging. And it's almost like the pendulum is always going to swing, but how much weight are you giving to it being on that end? How much weight are you giving to this experience being so true? And I think that's when we have tunnel vision or we have really broad vision. That's where it's like awareness is not taking what's happening in your mind as fact. It's not believing anything. It's saying, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know how people perceive me, and I never will know how anyone perceives me. And the reason why in these times of fear or these times of we're experiencing intense emotions, because all the stories ever were just responses to the feeling, of course, it comes back to uncertainty. Of course, our mind's gonna want to go back to believing that. Because otherwise we're sitting in a pile of I don't know.
And that pile of I don't know is scary. It's painful even. But maybe something I wish I would have known when I started this journey of sitting with my emotions and taking accountability for myself is that pain that you're holding, that's like those big Lego blocks in your stomach, just like swirling around like a tornado, is that those blocks quickly turn to feelings of freedom. Simply, they turn to feelings of freedom just like that. So quick. It happens so instantaneously. And that's what you go into, holding these big blocks of emotion, taking accountability for them. You go into that not knowing how long that's going to last. When I first started doing this, I was like, Jesus Christ, is this going to be the rest of my life? Like what you were saying earlier, the judgments of when the pendulum's not far left. But you just gotta, that's the story. It's like, cut it, sit with it, and then quickly, it's like the pendulum skyrockets back to the right. You can't have thought. You said earlier something around thought and how that's what creates misery. And yeah, thought is what creates misery, but it's what keeps you, it's not awareness. Awareness isn't in the thought. You said something along the lines of like that, of awareness and thought being two different things, because awareness is like it's a knowing. Thought is not a knowing that is greater than you. It's like awareness it's leaning into something outside of thought. It's almost like you learn, and we never learn this. It's almost like you learn to feel the emotions in different parts of your body. We were in a yoga class, or I was in a yoga class yesterday, and they had us hold our two palms together. And she's like, feel the energy between your palms. And I remember doing this in the past and being like, whatever. But I really was like, whoa, like when you have intense focus, you can feel like your palms like crawling with energy a little bit. And there's energy pulsating throughout our bodies. And when we're not holding accountability to our emotions, when we're just going through life in a trance or an autopilot, all of this stuff sounds woo as fuck. Because you're like, fuck that. That's stupid. Like, I have to get this deadline met. Give me 2 more coffees. Like, give me that sugar donut. Like, let's fucking go. I'm the best person ever. I'm in a frat. I say what's up. Like, you know, that whole shit that I feel like I live so much of my life in. Or on the opposite of like, poor me, win, like, baby, like so upset. Like, no one will ever like me because I'm so sad, blah, blah, blah. When you're living in that state, all of this shit sounds woo as fuck. But when you are actually taking accountability, sitting with this stuff, you start to see that there's almost another language that your body speaks that is not verbal, has nothing to do with your thoughts, conscious thoughts. It's all your unconscious. Maybe this is getting more attached, not attached, but more tapped in. This is what deepening means. I know you said about like deepening into the awareness. I think that's what that means, is you start to realize that this body we have, there's a lot there that we have not given enough attention to in our Western society. Anything that involves having awareness or self-healing with the body, woo-woo, canceled. We don't believe that. That's weird. But it's our body. You know, there's no separation between the body and the mind. And I think when it comes to yoga and breathing with the movement, like real yoga, like real traditional slow yoga, not trying to get anything out of it, truly a moving meditation, you start to hone that language that is the subliminal. You hone that language that is the subconscious. You hold that language that maybe when you're on like a psychedelic or when you're on the drug of love and you just are so present, it's really just that presence. When we actually are so present, we're so tapped into the sublime, the subconscious. And that is more powerful than anything, any thought. And we're reading The Creative Act, and it's almost like his message travels through his words because it taps you into like this like subliminal state, it feels like, of hypnotic, of transportation. Like it takes you somewhere. It's not the words. And I think of education growing up. I always loved English class because it was like metaphorical. You could get away with like kind of imagination. But there was also a part of it that was like hard and rigid of there's one interpretation of this Shakespeare quote and what is it? Go. And it's like, well, that's not how this works. It's everyone's going to have a different interpretation of things because different experience. It goes into the broader state of consciousness. It's beyond thought. And maybe that's the root of the problem with the education system, is that it's all rooted in thought. And all power is rooted beyond thought. By power, I don't mean control. By power, I mean force. Force is beyond thought. And we've highly invested in thought as a society, and that's trickled down to our daily experience. So all of that to be said, life gets really interesting when you dive into taking accountability for yourself, because then you dechain yourself from the jail cell of thought. There's so much beyond that. We're beginning to watch a show on animals across the world, how they have this new camera that shows different technologies of what the birds see as different colors that they appear as, that we can't even see within like a mating call. And it's exactly that. There's so much beyond that we don't know, that we can't see. And we don't like to talk about that because it's uncomfortable. But when we do get comfortable with the uncomfortable consistently, that's where a whole new world opens up. So it matters a lot less what the stories you've told yourself are, because that is a way to make your world very small. So I've clearly tapped into that because I'm not thinking. This is a full body, like, whew, we're talking. We're fucking vibing. Like, this is something greater. This is not thought. This is not unique to me. This is an energy source that we've tapped into right here.
It's so cool because like when we started this episode, I was not there. I was rigid and worried and thinking, and it's like just a reminder to anybody listening that when you feel like you've lost yourself, you haven't. You can always find your way back. And when I mean find your way back, I mean find your way back to truth. And recognizing that there is no truth really beyond the present. And that every single story that you're telling yourself about what you think your life right now means about you and how that means about your life and what's going to happen in the future and what happened in the past, it's not happening right here. Do yourself a favor and go watch the Netflix and the Netflix documentary we were watching last night. I think it was Seeing the World in Color by David Attenborough. I think that's his name. And he's the one who narrates Life on Our Planet. Like, holy shit. Allow yourself to look up that stuff, look up nature, watch documentaries about it, watch movies about it, read, go outside. I understand that the society we live in, especially in the working world, especially in these jobs that we work in, don't cultivate time for us to think about this stuff. So it's so important to cultivate that time. And that's why we have the community Zooms. And we should put this in the intro. We're going to add a second one because this conversation is the most important thing that I think in this life.
And we were actually talking with our community Zoom members this Tuesday, and they made a suggestion. They're like, guys, this is really good shit. You don't advertise this at all. You should, so other people know that it's here because people are looking for this. And I'm like, guys, thank you. Like, that's helpful because we don't talk about it. And we have a circle of 3 people who come basically weekly. And we have some deep convos of there's no judgment. You can say whatever you want in terms of understanding, of just free thought, of basically what we do here on the podcast of like letting go. That's what we do in the community Zoom. It's exactly that. And what a profound experience it is to have an hour, or if you're a Patreon supporter, 2 hours, and we're going to keep adding more because we want to keep having this conversation. But how profound is it? The way we have this podcast, we get to tap into letting go. How powerful is that? That's what we do in the community Zoom with everyone. And everyone is showing up, trying to take accountability and just show up. And we just don't know where the convo goes, but everyone walks away feeling better than when they arrived. We all feel like we've plugged into the source of this connection of something beyond us that's beyond thought. So I want to formally invite listeners, if you enjoy this conversation and you feel like you feel brave enough to enter a community Zoom, and they are super welcoming. Don't be afraid. I know how that can be intimidating to join a community Zoom, but I'm trying to give some more clarity on what it is. And we also had, our friend also had an idea that we should post clips of our Zooms because we do record them and put them on Patreon, and they're like really fucking good episodes with other people. And we want to start bringing on people to this so we can put that out there for you guys so you can know what it's like to join the community Zoom. But it's really just like sitting here and talking with us, and there's some other really fucking cool people who are doing the same thing. So I'll put a little advertisement for it at the beginning of the episode, but I just wanted to speak directly to all of you because even our members were like, you need to do a better job at getting people to come because it's a really valuable conversation. So if it's even in the slightest, this is a great example to let go of the story that you couldn't join something like this because you're too nervous to talk. Of course not. This is a space for you to come and challenge that and have a good conversation. Bring yourself, try to let go, and lose yourself to the convo. That's what it is. So we hope to see you there. The link to sign up is in our bio below in the show notes. And stay tuned. We'll give you updates. We're going to add another one. But right now, every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, that's the free one. 8 p.m. Eastern, that's the Patreon one. I think it's like $5 a month. And we're going to continue to add more. But Tuesdays, if that works for you. And you also, if you're interested in more, send us a day. But I think we're going to add another one on Thursdays. But we hope to see you there. Again, I'm not even speaking from me. I'm speaking from our members. We need to advertise this more. So we hope to see you there. And we hope that you join the conversation because it'll only be better when you're there.
I'm so excited to add more, really. And I'm just so excited to keep deepening this conversation because wow, like I feel like I remember everything I forgot. And what I forgot was to come back, was to begin again. And like, here I am beginning again. And thanks, Daisy, for this awesome conversation because it was really awesome. I mean that. Like I feel so entirely different. And I hope the listeners do as well. I hope that energy is contagious because that's the point of all this, is to remember there's more than just our mind. There's more than the stories. There's more to life. And you're never stuck. You're never, ever stuck. So, wow. I'm glad we took yesterday off because it's gotten us to this point and we needed that time to reflect. And I'm really excited. And thank you all for being here. It's been an incredible conversation. And I really am grateful to have you all along the ride.
Same. And let this be a reminder. Don't work hard out of hating yourself. When you feel like you need to work the hardest, take the day off because that's a sign, if you're anything like me, that you need to cultivate some love within yourself. And it's not selfish to do that. It's actually selfless to do that because as Michael Jackson said, I'll quote him from the song because it's ingrained in my mind forever. If you want to change the world, look at the man in the mirror. That's where the work starts. So with that being said, I hope that you're able to find it within you today to cultivate that love because that's where self-accountability first starts, is when you start to love yourself and start to push through the stories that tell you that you are unlovable. So we thank you for being here today. We thank you for being a part of this community. And we hope to see you at the community Zoom coming up this evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.